And we're live.
Just as your dogs are barking.
That's my dog barking. It's the girliest dog in the world. And we're live for another OFT live chat. I'm your host, Rob, and I'm joined again for 3 weeks in a row by MMA On Points, Jason Hartley. Jason, how are you?
What up, homie? I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm doing good, man. I'm having a good day. It's super, super sunny out today. It's just been a really good day so far. So, yeah. How about you?
That's awesome. And my thing is playing there. Don't mind that. So first my dog interrupts me, then I interrupt myself on my phone. But yeah, I'm good, man. I'm very good. I'm good to talk a lot about Donald Trump and Colby Covington, because that's obviously the big news that happened today. Colby Covington done it. He did it. He went to the White House. Like, realistically though, I know that, you know, Donald Trump is whatever and Colby Covington is whatever, but that's pretty big for an MMA fighter to meet the president in the White House, right?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you think about him, that is, you know, here in America, I don't know how other people perceive it, but that's the leader of the free world, as we like to say. And it's Colby Covington there with his sword of belt. Like, I posted on Twitter, I was like, what belt? Because, I mean, like, they basically just announced he's no longer the champion. Yes, technically, the first punch getting thrown is when the belt, like, dissolves, I guess, you know? Kind of like they did with Conor. But my opinion is he's not going to be ready for that fight. And if for whatever reason Till falls out, it would have to be only if Wood falls out. I mean, that's Woodley falls out. You know, T Wood. If it would only be if he falls out, if they find a last minute replacement or something like that, it still means that Colby loses his title. Yeah. And then again, Dana could put a switcheroo, but still, I mean, yeah, it's quite a feat to be there in the White House. But it is interesting that he's basically not the champion anymore. That's the weird thing. I have an opinion on that, and I don't know if you agree with this, but before we continue on with this is a live chat. What that means is that we want your questions. We don't have a whole lot to talk about, as in we don't really, like, I covered 227 already this week, so we kind of don't need to go into that too much. We can if you want, but we want your questions. Ask us anything and everything and invite people in so we can have a chat. But on the Donald Trump thing, I think he would take offense to the fact that Colby may be stripped. I think if Dana said to him, you know, he's not really the champion, he possibly won't be the champion soon, I think Donald Trump would be like, what? Why did you bring him here? I want the best. I want the best person. I think he'd really take offense to that. That's why I don't think he's going to be stripped. Conspiracy. I honestly don't know if Donald Trump knows or cares. Like, he was the first guy, like, at the Trump Taj Mahal, to put on a UFC event when they were going through their deregulation, regulation, you know, re-regulation period. But, you know, I don't really know that he's necessarily a fight fan outside of the big stuff. I mean, you would hope as president of the United States that he's a pretty busy guy and isn't necessarily keeping up with the nuances of MMA. I don't know. That would be funny. But yeah, it's just like on Twitter right now, just waiting for the most recent headlines to kind of pop up.
He's in this live chat right now. Trump, if you're here, send us a question.
He doesn't miss a live chat. Never does. Yeah. No. Yeah. He's also known as Dan from Oregon.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Cool disguise, Trump, Dan from Oregon. Yeah, it's crazy. I gotta say, fair play to Colby Covington for getting that done. I know Dana White probably sorted it out, but you know, what can you say? You know, you can say what you want to say about Trump and Colby, but it's pretty cool to see that for MMA to be at that level. You know, no matter what you think of either guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how much publicity this is. I wonder how many tweets and retweets does Colby have? So right now, it's about 4:30 Eastern time US. He's got 3,000 retweets and 10,000 likes on it. So not a ton, not as much as I would expect.
I wonder if Trump has retweeted it yet, or if you will.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. I'd imagine not. You'd assume it'd have a lot more interaction.
Yeah, I would assume not. Like if it did, I think it would be reflected pretty quickly.
Yeah, but
yeah, nothing.
Yeah, it's weird. Colby Covington, what a man. The other news that's not quite good for the UFC's publicity, you'd say, is the UFC is struggling somewhat with ratings. Their last UFC on Fox show, which was a really good card, really not just after the fact, as in the fights were good, but going into it was a good card, especially for if you wanted an action fight, if you wanted a really good MMA fight, you were looking at the main event and saying, this is a good fight. And then you also had these fighters who we thought were stars. We thought Jose Aldo was some kind of star. We thought Joanna had some star power. Yeah. Apparently not. Or what's your opinion on the UFC's very mediocre? And did it end up being the worst rated Fox event, or the second worst, something like that?
The worst. I think they just didn't promote Tisha Torres enough. I'm of the mind, I don't know, like, I'm honestly baffled by it. One of the things that I do keep seeing come up, though, is this oversaturation argument and the streaming argument. And one of the things that I particularly hear from, like, when I watch MMA fighting or, like MMA Beat Today, they pretty much shot down the streaming idea. And I don't necessarily think that that's the best argument to make. Because Luke Thomas, for instance, when Nick Newell, I remember when I was researching my video, he had Nick Newell on his show, and they were talking about how he was a big N64 guy. And Luke Thomas, after hearing that, he was like, oh, dude, you wouldn't believe it. I bought this classic NES console that has 60 whole games on it. And Nick Newell was like, oh, yeah, I have an emulator. That doesn't matter. like it just kind of... And I'm 32, so, like, I'm kind of in between. Actually, I'm Nick Newell's age. So for Luke Thomas to kind of say that kind of tells me that he doesn't really know much about it. And Ariel Wani's also dismissed it on his show, which, I still consider him MMA fighting. There's not been enough time to kind of separate that. But and then you got, like Chuck Wagenheim and guys like that also kind of echo those sentiments. And my thing is, it's like, well, you got who's basically watching these events more than anybody else? It's definitely the hardcore fans. And I think if you are super oversaturated, it would lend itself to make a lot of sense that people are finding ways to no longer spend money on the UFC. Yeah. Fox is a national television channel here, so that means that somebody could literally set up rabbit ears and they could pick it up. I don't know anyone that does that. I don't know a single person that does that. Most people my age, like our major demographic, we had 4.5 million views over the past month on MMA On Point. Our average demographic is 18 to 25 to 34. Okay. And I would guess most of those people are like me and the people that are younger than me that don't pay for pay-per-views. Or they know a whole lot about the internet enough to where, like, I mean, I don't want to necessarily expose. I don't want to be like advertising and pirating, but it's extremely easy.
So easy.
Yeah. And I've been to places, wink, wink, before where people do that. And it's very simple. Yeah. And one of the things that I heard back is like, oh, it's virus sitting. No, it's not. And especially if you've been doing it long enough, it's so extremely simple. And what you're leaning on for the majority of these cards are the hardcore fans. And I mean, I don't have cable. None of those people, I would imagine, like none of my friends have cable. None of my fight friends have cable. I mean, pretty much none of my friends have cable. Pretty much none of them do. Yeah. So my thing is, I think people, it might be a way that ESPN Plus helps out, when everything switches over, because people are like, okay, I'll pay $5 for high quality streaming for 12 events a year. And then, everything else that they do. But I think it's just so goddamn easy for a hardcore fan to find these streams. It's not hard at all. And I think that the fact that they're paying out every month means that they're going to skimp out on as much as they can. I'm probably going to pay for this pay-per-view on Saturday. I'll say that. But I think so many of these hardcore fans are tired of ponying up money over and over again, and then a cable bill on top of it. I think most hardcore fans have just kind of adopted this, like, hey, man, there's another fight next month. Maybe I'll pay for that. I'll stream this one, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's a point that I made on this week's show. I think that we don't understand how different viewing habits for even our generation, or like I'm 26, so my generation and down, I don't think we understand how different that is to, like, we're comparing almost apples to oranges. I think that if you compare even 2015, 2014 ratings to 2018, I think that's insane, because since then Netflix has become huge, Amazon Prime has become huge, all these have become huge, and just because that's not a sporting event, I think that still changes the viewing habits of a customer. I really do, and to change my viewing habits, I don't watch TV at all. The last time I've turned on an actual cable television was maybe for the World Cup, because it was easy to get it there, but that's it. You know, I don't watch TV at all, and I think that a lot of people are like that. I think a lot of people, especially young people who are watching MMA, that's the major demographic. It's the demographic you said, 25 to 30, or probably 21 to 35, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a far and away kind of thing for us. Like, over half of our audience is in that age group. Yeah. So everything else trickles down. Like, it's bigger on the younger side than it is on the like after that 50%. It's bigger on the younger side than it is on the older side. Yeah. So everything skews really young in this sport, and obviously it's YouTube. So I should also factor that in. Obviously YouTube is going to be a little bit younger than the television viewing audience that by nature is almost inherently an older crowd. So it's not an apples to apples comparison when we're looking at YouTube and then comparing that with the people that are watching TV. But that's the most active audience. That's the people that aren't missing the news. They're not missing all the updates. They're the ones that are keeping up with these fights, I think, more so than anybody else, because they just have more access. They choose to be online more.
Yeah, it's weird, because what other, apart from live sports, what other thing do you say to yourself, I need to sit down at this time in front of a television and watch it?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I mean, live sports, I think, are the only thing.
The only thing that's left.
Yeah.
And I think, if that's the only thing that's left, the people who are going to gravitate towards that are the people who are already watching, as you said, the hardcore fan. If you're a casual fan, if you're, a 22, 23-year-old guy, you're not going to see ads on the TV to watch the UFC on Fox. You're not going to see that. You're going to be on YouTube. You're going to be on Netflix. You're going to be on, all this other stuff. I think that's a much bigger factor than illegal streaming. Everyone's going to illegal stream, but I think just the way people watch TV and content is completely different these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it speaks towards the model of the UFC and how, people have been saying this forever, but it's still been true. There still are big pay-per-views, but generally it's skewed lower and lower year by year. Even going back to 2005 and 07, these really big boom years, just after Pride and just after Tough, the first season, you can still see it through all those different things. It's still skewed downward, the numbers, the entire time. And that's just because that's how people consume things now. They're not used to, and the price has gone up too, so that hasn't helped, Yeah. So
I would love to see like DVR and streaming numbers, because I don't think it has changed as drastically as a lot of other people think. A couple of questions in the chat. Keep them coming, lads. Keep them coming. So now and later, I don't know about the president, Don, but Don Jr. and the young son are always in the best seats at McGregor's card, even 205 card. I know he got elected. Interesting. I don't know how much he likes MMA, but he at least has some kind of affiliation with it, because, as you said, he was involved in the UFC early days, or he at least let them hold an event. He also was involved in Infliction as well, which was a weird one.
Yeah. I didn't know Don Jr. was there. I remember there was a lot of talk about, Trump coming to that.
Remember that,
and that he actually wanted to come to that, but they felt it was too... it was just right after the election. It wasn't Saturday. It was Thursday. So it would have been 2 days prior to that. Yeah. But yeah, it was just incredible. There are protests going on downtown, and not to say there haven't been protests before, but it was just on another level for a U.S. election. That's 100% for sure. And I think they were just like, okay, maybe maybe I don't need to be here for this.
Yeah. Question about Conor McGregor, Khabib. If you had to bet, when would you say McGregor fights Khabib? All things are pointing towards October 6th. Is that right? October 6th or October 9th? October 6th, which is UFC 229. And there's too many reports. There's like more than you can kind of say. And there's also a Instagram story by Conor McGregor's lawyer booking flights for those dates as well, which he promptly deleted. But do you have any other opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it's ultimately clear because right after all the proceedings that happened where they were like, oh yeah, you got 5 days of community service and 1 to 3 days of anger management and restitution for the bus or whatever. Right after that, Adi Attar, Conor McGregor's manager, spoke to Ariel Helwani outside of the courthouse and pretty much outright said, we're targeting October 6th. Yeah. So I think everything is skewing that direction. I don't think it makes sense to put them on the New York card because I think that'll probably be a big card anyway. And actually, I think for as bad as all the 200 stuff was with Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor being pulled off that and the weird drama because he wouldn't show up to press conferences and stuff like that so he could train for their rematch. I think it worked out way better because they sold over 1 million pay-per-views for UFC 200, and then they sold their biggest pay-per-view ever with those guys pretty much carrying that entire card by themselves. And Anthony Johnson and Glover Teixeira was on that, so don't get me wrong. There were some really great fights underneath that, but there's no secret what sold that card. No secret whatsoever.
Top heavy.
And yeah, really top heavy. And I think it's brilliant to do that, to say, okay, we know if we literally just put these two people, I mean, boxing does it all the time and nobody bats an eye at it. Just literally put the two top guys on a card separate and then you can stack the other cards as much as you want. I'm not saying that as a fight fan, that's necessarily what we want, but dude, I'm paying for that pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I'm paying for that no matter what. There's no way I'm going to go through one of these streams at a friend's house, wink, wink, and the connection cuts out because everyone's funneling in at the exact same time to watch the main event. There's no way I'm risking that. I'm watching it live, high quality, HD. Nothing's going to happen. I'm sitting down. I'm watching that live. You know what I mean? So I think it's brilliant to do it in October. I don't think it makes sense to do it in November, and December feels too late.
Yeah.
I mean, better late than never, but still.
Yeah. But like, just thinking now, it's the 2nd of August now, so we don't have a long time to wait. We really don't, which is excellent because sometimes fights get announced, way too far in advance, especially when they do like the Ultimate Fighter, which just completely just does my head in when they say, oh yeah, these guys are going to fight after the Ultimate Fighter, and it takes like a year for the Ultimate Fighter to record, air, and then the guys to actually to fight. So I think it's really good, really smart to have this fight come up in October because, like, it's all the promotion's there anyway. There's not a whole lot of promotion you need to do for this one. Yeah,
this one sells itself, and ironically, they're going to be using all that stuff that they hated just a couple months ago at 223.
Yeah, which was apparently one of the worst things to happen in the sport, but they'll show it everywhere.
Yeah, like my feeling on it is it's bad for the sport, good for the fight. Now people will associate, cage fighting, to use that odd term. They will now associate that with Conor McGregor throwing, a dolly through a bus and injuring fighters inside. They're going to associate those two things and see that as a confirmation of that.
Yeah.
But the fight fans or the casual fans that do want to see this sort of thing aren't going to be deterred by it.
No, they'll love it. Do you think that will hurt the sport at all? Or do you think the fight is just too big that, whatever kind of promotion happens and it's not really going to affect the sport in the long run?
I think if you were on the line and you see something like that, you were like, I'm not sure if I like this, but I also kind of I kind of like this, but I kind of don't. I think if you saw that, maybe a few of them will be converted where they'll be like, okay, yeah, I think I actually kind of want to see this now because that was really crazy. But I think a lot of other people are like, man, fighters are idiots.
Yeah.
I'm saying what they think. It's kind of like I remember when the Ultimate Fighter first got announced because I wasn't super into fighting back then. And I remember hearing about how they were going to do a reality show with fighters. I was like, oh, they're just going to fight. Yeah, I just thought it was the dumbest thing in the planet. So, I mean, obviously shows that I can be wrong about these things because people did tend to like it. But I think if you're on the line and you see something kind of an ugly incident like that, you're going to be like, I don't know if I want to get involved in that. But if you already are a fan, I think you're probably not deterred by that anyway.
Yeah. Interesting you said that. Just from it, because we haven't really talked about this. When did you first get into MMA, and do you remember what the first fight was that you watched, or at least the one that kind of got you into the sport?
Ooh, I wish I could remember what fight it was, but it was a Pride fight way back in the day. It was around 1999 or 2000. Believe it or not, there's a guy that was a preacher that owned a coffee shop just right by where I lived, and my dad got to know him. My dad's, super hardcore Christian, and so we would go to this coffee shop and hang out, and they would actually, I played music, so me and my brother would play music there and stuff like that, and the guy who owned the place just happened to be a guy who fought in Pride by the name of John Rinkin, and they called him the Fighting Preacher is what they called him.
Nice.
Yeah, and so you would have get-togethers there in that coffee shop. And one night just so happened to be a Pride event, and I didn't know what was going on. Everybody just started gathering the chairs around together. And I wish I could tell you who it was. It sounds like Vanderlei Silva from how I'm about to describe it, but it ended really quickly, and somebody just got kneed into oblivion. That was the first fight I ever saw. The first one I ever elected to see on my own was Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell 2, the second one.
Nice.
So that would have been around 06 or 07. I guess that would have been 06, right? And then when I really started getting into it, as much as I hate to say it, was Brock Lesnar versus Randy Couture. Nice. Because I was just like, wait, that big fucker is going to fight Randy Couture? I already knew who Randy Couture was. So I guess you could say I was a casual fan leading up from Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell too. And I'd seen Chuck Liddell's fights before that and stuff like that, but that was where I became kind of a casual fan, and I really started to become a fan after it was like, okay, wait, what the fuck is about to happen in this fight? And then I just started watching pretty much religiously, oddly. I don't know what it was. It just, something about that clicked after that. So.
Yeah. For me, I remember what the first kind of fight was that I saw, or the first kind of experience, because I vividly remember being in a friend's house, and there used to be a channel called Bravo over here that showed old fights. They weren't quite really old, they weren't years old. It was probably maybe 5-6 months they'll show the fight, and it was Evan Tanner against Tito Ortiz a long time ago, and I didn't know what was going on. I did not know what was going on, and that didn't really get me into MMA, because I was looking at it, I was like, and I liked wrestling back then. Right. I was really young as well, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I was like, is this wrestling? Is this real? But then eventually, I'd say probably 2 years after that, maybe 3 years after that, I start getting into it. But I can't really remember the fight or the one that really got me hooked as a hardcore fan, you'd say, or at least somebody who followed the sport religiously. I can't remember that fight, but I do remember Evan Tanner, Tito Ortiz vividly, which is weird.
Yeah, that was their first fight back in Vegas, right? And that was that wasn't the first one back in Vegas. It might have been
the one I think it was 2001 or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2001. That's right. So so this probably would have been 2002 when I saw it. So that was a long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
We have a Bravo channel here, but it's like an independent movie channel. Oh. So I don't know if they would show anything like that, but they did start showing reality TV shows, so that might be it. No, I don't know, but
possibly. Some questions there. I heard some in the media say that the event would hurt boxing, which I would say it isn't true. I heard it would be good for MMA from the media. But was it bad? I think he's talking about Maymac. So the first question was about Maymac, or the first statement. And the second one was basically saying a lot of people in the media said that fight would hurt boxing and help MMA. Do you have any opinion on that? Did that fight help MMA? Did it hurt MMA? Did it help boxing, hurt boxing? I think it helped boxing a little bit, because I think some MMA fans that didn't watch boxing got their first experience of it, even though it wasn't the best fight in the world, it wasn't the most technical boxing fight in the world, but maybe some of those fans crossed over. I don't think it hurt boxing.
Well, in the first part of it, it sounds like he misunderstood what we were saying, because he was saying he doesn't think there's a connection. I'm assuming he means between the dolly being thrown to the bus because he said because the UFC was declining before it. So we're asking after that, is there going to be any sort of repercussions from it? That's totally regardless of what's happened before it, because that decline, yes, I agree, it started happening before it. What we're asking is the thing that we haven't seen measured. Is there a decline that's also associated with that? We could say the last weekend, but we don't really know. It's just more of a hypothetical. So we're not saying the decline is a result, or I'm not saying the decline is a result of the Dolly incident. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying it did hurt, I think, among the casuals, and it hasn't been measured. I don't know how you could measure it this early. Yeah. But so the other part of the question was, what was it saying? I heard it was good for MMA media, but was it? I always had a different opinion of this, because most people, what I heard say is, oh, well, it's going to be good for Conor no matter what, because, we still don't know the answer to that. They would say it's going to be good for him no matter what, because he's going to make a fat paycheck, and he's just going to be able to say, oh, well, that was boxing, I can go back to MMA. And I think that's definitely going to be true for some people, but I wonder how many people also looked at that and said, oh, well, I've never really been a fan of MMA. I've been a fan of boxing. And Mayweather hasn't knocked out anybody in 10 years aside from Ortiz after that weird referee separation from the headbutts. Yeah. And he knocked out Conor McGregor, one of the top fighters in the UFC. I can pessimistically see it from someone's angle that doesn't like it and uses that as a justification to say that the UFC is not as sophisticated or is not boxing is a sweet science, and it got proved because this fighter that never knocked anybody out, knocked out Conor.
That's a good point, because when I was looking at it, and I didn't think it in that way, because most of the people that I would talk to MMA about would be fairly into MMA. They'd be big fans, and even the people who are into boxing, a lot of them are really into boxing, so they understand the difference between MMA and boxing. So the general opinion of my circle was Mayweather's going to win, and it's not going to hurt MMA because everybody knows that Conor's not a boxer. But for the fans who maybe casually watch boxing and don't really watch MMA, maybe they're the ones that say, oh, well, look at this guy. He's supposed to be the best fighter in his sport, and he couldn't even last with Mayweather, who hasn't beat anybody or hasn't finished anybody in whatever. So, looking at it in that way, maybe it hurt MMA a little bit. But, I never really looked at it from that kind of standpoint.
Yeah, I think we'll know when this pay-per-view, because it could be, people are predicting this does 2 million in sales. They also did the same for 205, which was less than 202. So I'm not necessarily convinced. And actually, I think this would be a good segue into the whole idea of, Khabib wants, 2 million, like what Nate Diaz got. But we did get a response back from Hilton Dotton Quesada. I don't know how you say that name, dude. But you said, no, I just meant in general that the numbers were going down. It sounded like you were responding to one of the comments, though. Yeah. So I'm a bit confused by what you meant, because you said, I don't think there's a connection. So can you clarify what you meant by you don't think there's a connection? Connection to what?
Yeah.
But on the Nate Diaz line, though, if you don't mind me jumping into that.
Yeah.
I don't think that Khabib actually is worth as much as Nate Diaz. And I mean that not by skill level, because skill level, 100 million, 1,000%. But how much did he sell at UFC 223? And don't get me wrong, that card got ransacked by a million issues. But you would have thought, considering the McGregor deal, that way more people would have wanted to see this fighter that McGregor was so enraged by that he literally tried to rip down the bus to get to him. There just is no track record that the UFC can then say. I mean, it's like if you go to a negotiating table and you say, oh, well, I've got these statistics to back up the reason why you should pay me more. It's like if you're going for a job, you're already at a job and you're going for a raise, you can say, I've done this. People that are usually in my range of what they sold have made this much. He doesn't really have those bargaining chips, in my opinion. And, it could be that he sells that much. But the thing that Nate Diaz had was he made a shit ton in the first fight, but he made way more in the second fight because of how well the first fight did.
Yeah.
So this assumption that he's worth as much is kind of an unproven idea. The question is, does the UFC buy into the idea that they're going to sell 2 million pay-per-views? And if they do, then maybe he has a chance for it. But in my mind, there's nothing like, if I were that guy at the negotiating table on the UFC side, I'd be like, you're saying that you're going to sell as many pay-per-views as Nate Diaz? What if you don't? Are you want to back down and say, okay, after the fact, maybe I'm not worth that much? Like, are you willing to kind of pay up on that? In my mind, it doesn't sell as much. I'm just going to say that.
Wow.
It could. I hope it sells more. I'll say that. Yeah. I want it to sell more.
Well,
but I don't think there's any evidence that he's as big a fight as Nate Diaz.
Yeah, and I know it's not really the same kind of argument, but we all expected Cormier's fight to do well. Cormier-Stipe to do pretty well. I'm not talking about Conor McGregor levels well, but I mean, would have done well, and we just expected that. It's a super fight, and it really was a super fight, and it didn't. It didn't really do that well. 223 apparently done, which is UFC 223, which was the Khabib fight, I guess. Done between 210,000 350,000 K pay-per-view buys, which is kind of a weird estimate. You have like a 40% difference. Why? That makes no sense. But let's say,
I was just thinking the same thing.
Benefit of the doubt, 350,000 buys. It's okay, but it's not great. But I don't know. I think the rivalry by itself and Conor sells a lot. But I can't honestly, I can't guarantee it either. I can't guarantee that it does more than me.
I mean, I'm on board for it. I hope it does more than that. I hope that it's this massive fight and it's this boom that I think really the UFC clearly needs, probably more than they ever have in their history. I mean, if I'm just being totally honest about that. And I'm usually the optimistic one. When people were saying last year that the numbers were going down and we were in a decline, I was like, dude, 2014 was way worse. And obviously the UFC has this new TV deal, but I wonder how ESPN's feeling about that, because they just paid them all this money and it feels like they're not about to get the returns that they hope for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I sound like a pessimist because we just so happen to be talking about subject matters where I don't necessarily hold the most optimistic view on it. Sure. But it is one of these kind of things where if I'm on the UFC side, I'm just like, dude, like, I don't have any reason to think that you're going to sell more than Nate Diaz did, the most ever. Like, you think going from 210 to 350 that you're going to jump all the way to 1.7 to 2 million? I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I think it'll break 1 million.
I estimate it's going to do between 1 million and 1,000,009, because apparently you can make them estimations.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, there's your 40% jump there.
Yeah, what the hell? That's
almost
insane.
50.
Yeah, crazy. I seen something today, and everybody, if there's people in this chat, I can see there's a few people watching and a few people commenting. Give us some more questions, anything, everything. We'll answer them all. But I seen something today which interested me a little bit, just in terms of the kind of different aspects of a UFC champion. Demetrius Johnson said that he's not interested in a bout with TJ Dillashaw next. He's more interested in looking at the contenders like Shorty Torres, who just has one fight in the UFC, and Sergio Pettis, who's...
Oh, that's so funny.
I know. That's what he said on a conference call.
Covering him on our video most recently. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I seen that, yeah.
His most recent win was by self-knockout.
Yeah. He didn't knock himself out, to be fair to him.
No, the other guy knocked himself out. I'm forgetting his name right now. Brooks?
Yeah, Jared Brooks.
Jared Brooks knocked himself out by doing a slam, and he landed on the back of his head and knocked himself out instantly. So that's the guy that you're like, let's give that guy a title shot. So here's the thing. So this ties in with the Khabib thing. This idea that you deserve this money because you have these accolades. Dude, you're in the marketing business. It doesn't work that way. There is no proven track record whatsoever. It's been just the opposite with Demetrius Johnson. He's like, dude, give me millions of dollars and I'll make this fight happen. And he's complaining about how he doesn't get paid enough. But it's like, dude, if you won this fight, you would now be getting that sort of pay. Like, you would now have earned that sort of pay by the sheer marketing that would be successful on the back end of this fight. Like, there is nothing that Demetrius Johnson has done to sell himself. He doesn't talk trash. He's not super, like, he's not a big guy. There's the dumb fans that just think, okay, well, you're too short, so I don't think you're awesome, which I think that's really stupid. Uriah Faber is one I always bring up. Somebody's barely taller. But, like, you don't just out of nowhere just say, okay, I want millions of dollars because this is a tough fight. I don't think it works like that. Like, no. You prove yourself first as a bankable star, just like movie stars. I mean, there's really, really not much of a big difference here. It's like you have a really bad, string of movies that doesn't sell well. All of a sudden, you get knocked down the totem pole. You might be the best actor in the world, but if your movies don't sell, well, they're like, well, we're not going to invest a shit ton of money into you because we're not going to get it back. And the same thing with UFC. They have, and whether it's fair or not, they have their own profit margins that they decide makes enough sense to where it's like, all right, we're going to spend millions of dollars on you to fight. And the only way that happens is if you start taking some risks. And so far, he's been a very safe champion. He's been an incredible champion. I'm, for one, a huge fan of him. But you can't just go off of, well, I like him, so let's pay him. It doesn't work like that, So there's enough of my soapbox.
Do you think the UFC could do anything better to promote Demetrius?
I think they're trying everything they can. Yeah. I think they've thrown everything out there, like having that tough season where it's like the season of champions. Like, this idea that marketing, like, I have a PR degree and I used to work for an organization as a director of communications. This idea that it is easy to just promote shit and it works, like, I'll put it on a billboard. Like, you don't think they did that? Like, Are you shitting me? Like, anybody who says that doesn't know dick. Just kidding. Doesn't know dick. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Expletives, just throw them out there for no reason. But they don't know shit about marketing. Marketing is not something where you just throw money at it and it works. If that was the case, every single music artist, the record industry, or every single movie the movie industry ever put out would be successful. It doesn't work like that. And believe me, there is zero reason, if that was the case, that the UFC wouldn't do that. Yeah. If you believe that, you're one of those people that literally sitting here saying, oh, well, the UFC doesn't want to make money, because that's basically what you're saying. It's like, if they could make a shit ton of money off Demetrius Johnson, why the hell wouldn't they do that? Like, you really think that they're just like, nah, let's not invest. Let's not invest and make a shit ton of money back. Let's not do that. It's like, no, people respond to people, and they're not responding to Demetrius Johnson for one reason or another. And the biggest and best window that he has right now is calling out TJ Dillashaw. And I know TJ is going to do it after his fight if he wins. That's the best thing that he can possibly do with his career right now. And if he doesn't do that, he's going to continue being this guy that people know is incredibly dominant, but don't know who he's fighting. Like, Jose Torres, Jose Torres, that's not going to be a fight that people buy.
How funny would that be, though? How funny would that be if he got the microphone after the fight and was like, listen, this guy's been chasing me for so long. Shorty Torres, where you at?
Shorty Torres. Yeah, just build it up like everyone thinks you're about to say TJ, and then you just break down those expectations. Yeah, it's amazing.
I agree. I think that, he's a bland enough guy. Like, he's not the most kind of personable guy, but they did take away a lot from him, just putting him in the Reebok stuff, and I know that's what they're doing now, but I did think there was, if he was out there with the Xbox on him and they were like, this is a big game, or maybe he'd get some like this weird fan base. Not weird, I'm not calling gamers weird, I'm a gamer myself, but this different fan base,
fan base.
Yeah, this hybrid fan base that would maybe latch on. I don't know, maybe not, but I do think that he's just another guy to casual fans at this point, and it's a shame because he's a fucking phenomenal fighter and I love watching him fight. He's great. Just has no contenders except for Shorty Torres.
Now and Later brings up a good point here too, because he was saying DJ needs to fight TJ. No more excuses. If they both win, DC was trying. So actually, if you watch the interview, DC's like trying to throw him every single bone. He's like, dude, come on. You always come on TV. You and I have talked in private about this. Why are you not taking advantage of this? And you just see, DJ playing that same old tune of pay me. And I believe him. I believe he's sincere. Like, I don't think he's afraid of TJ. Like, if you're a professional fighter, unless like it's like a rare situation like the No Moss situation in boxing, I'm forgetting what his actual name is. But anyhow, no Moss. No, that's a good one too, where he like clearly had problems with his hands or didn't have problems with his hands. But no, this is the old school one in the 70s where. Oh my God! It is totally escaping me right now. Roberto Duran. They did a 30 for 30 about it. Yeah, in the middle of the fight, he just gave up. And at the midway through that fight, I think he just knew he was done. Sugar Ray Leonard is who he was fighting, and I just think I don't necessarily know he was afraid, but I definitely know he was frustrated, and he gave up for that reason. He's never come out and said exactly why, but like the idea that you're a professional fighter and you're afraid to fight, I don't buy that. Like, why the fuck are you fighting that? And like, you might be doing it just for money, but I don't think anybody who is fighting at a championship level has that level of doubt in their mind. If they do, they expel it, they hide it. I mean, fighters are almost like baseball players at, the batter's, cage where they have, the lucky rabbit's foot, or they have, specially scented bat, or, like something ridiculous like that. They're very superstitious about things because there's so many variables in MMA. And I don't think these people are walking out like, I'm going to lose. I don't think they're saying that, especially at the championship level. I think it's ridiculous to say that he's afraid of TJ. I don't think there's any truth to that.
I completely agree with that. I just don't know why he doesn't want to fight. I'm not sure why, and I'm sure there's reasons. I know that he did want to build that legacy. He did want to get them title defenses, which is admirable, and he's done a great job. But I'm not really sure. Taposhi, hello, how are you doing? Hilton Dutton Quasa, I can't say it either. Should the UFC have waited like a boxing promoter and waited an extra year before booking Cejudo against DJ? Absolutely. When they booked that fight, I was like, what are they doing? Cejudo clearly wasn't ready. I'm assuming they mean last time. I don't mean now. You probably can't wait anymore.
The first time.
Yeah, the first time, yeah.
Yeah,
at the time, Cejudo clearly wasn't ready. He had trouble making the weight. He had some good performances in the UFC, but, clearly, it was clear to everybody that he wasn't ready for that fight.
Yeah.
And they fed him to Demetrius because Demetrius has no contenders, and Demetrius chewed him up in a fight that he probably looked as good as he's ever looked, and that's because he was against an inexperienced Cejudo. I think it'd be a little bit different this time, but I still think Demetrius wins.
I've always joked that, like, when, speaking of no contenders, when he fought Ray Borg instead of TJ, kind of going back to when all this first started, I always kind of joked that Ray Borg sounds like a really shitty version of a cyborg. It's like just some normal dude named Ray Borg, and no disrespect to, like, that guy's beaten a ton of people, but it is just kind of funny that you have these contenders where it's Ray Borg.
It's like a character from, like, I don't know, Rick and Morty or something. It's like it's like a cyborg. It's like, here's my brother Ray Borg. And he's like half a cyborg, like a weird cyborg. I don't know. It's very funny,
he's just like the weak, like, brother of, like, Cyborg. Yeah. Just kind of walking around like, hey, it's me, Ray. It's my sister Cy. What's up? Watch my fight. Please pay.
And Ray Borg's good, but, like,
yeah, he's great. It's just easy to make fun of because nobody knows who he is. So
yeah. But
I agree with that point too, though. I do think not necessarily that they shot themselves in the foot, but it was too soon.
Yeah, completely agree.
So this next fight doesn't have as much intrigue as it should, But I think Cejudo has a legit chance here.
I'm intrigued by it, but I completely agree. I think if Cejudo just went on the run that he did, Although I don't think he'd be quite as good as he is now if he didn't have that
True.
loss.
Yeah.
But
It's true.
yeah, but it does lose a little bit of its steam with that. The great thing about these live chats, not just because we get some great questions and keep the questions coming, is that you get breaking news sometimes. And Volkan Ozdemir and Anthony Smith will headline UFC Moncton. I have never heard of that place. Is that
Moncton?
Canada? Moncton.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah. It's October 27th. Anthony Smith, who's on the best run he's been in quite a while, facing Volkan Ozdemir. I like that fight.
New Brunswick, Canada. Yeah, Moncton. I've never even heard of that place. I am so sorry, anyone from Canada. But yeah, that's a fantastic fight. I don't necessarily like the idea of Ozdemir fighting for the title right after he lost in such decisive fashion.
Yeah.
But if Smith can win, that sets up a really intriguing contender for the title, you know?
Yeah.
Obviously, title shot if he wins that, and anything that doesn't look terrible.
That would be crazy if Anthony Smith moved up and got a title fight. Like after having some bad losses against some not so great guys down at middleweight, and then comes up a weight. Clearly, that he's huge. I don't know how he made middleweight anyway, but it would be crazy for that to happen if you get the title fight quite soon.
From Strikeforce challengers to UFC title shot.
Man, from rags to riches.
That's crazy. It's funny because these people kind of fly under the radar because, you know, you see them fight and you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember Hodger Gracie getting that, you know, arm triangle. But you don't necessarily remember who it was because back then he wasn't a name. And then you look back and you're like, oh, shit, that was this guy that just totally destroyed Shogun, you know?
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating to kind of look back at all this and just see how far he's come.
Black Guys Production. When does obviously shite talk begin? That's an old tradition that me and Noel had when we would be on a live chat and we just end up talking about something complete, just random shit. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you want us to talk about, and we'll talk some shite. Flyweight. This is from again Hilton Dotton Queza. Flyweight has been.
Queza. You just given up entirely.
Yeah, it's clearly Quesada.
Quesada.
Yeah.
That's how.
Flyweight has been a lot of wad blowing, very nice. Pushing Cejudo early, pairing DJ against Ian McCall without spacing out the rematch more. Generally bad to rematch guys, too fast IMO. The only one with Ian McCall wasn't that the one where the judges, or at least the judges gave the wrong scorecards to Bruce Buffer, and it was supposed to be a draw. They announced Demetrius as the winner, so they were kind of forced to do that rematch, to be fair.
And they were supposed to do a sudden death round because it was a part of the whole tournament. So they had this special rule in there.
Yeah,
so we definitely got robbed as the fans on that one for sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous how incompetent you have to be to not add like really simple math together for something that important. It's a title fight.
I know.
And you can't add, I don't know, I don't remember what the numbers were, but I mean, it's obviously out of 30. So you can't add 30 together, you know.
Madness.
Ridiculous.
Can't even remember what I was going to say with that one. It was just a weird fight. The thing with DJ, I find, and we spoke about this in the show this week, is that I don't think anybody will beat him if they can't wrestle him, grapple him, and outmaneuver him on the ground. I don't think people's going to beat him on the feet because, not that he's the best striker in the division. I think, you know, you look at some other guys. Who's the karate guy? You know, the karate dude. Scoggins.
Oh, Horiguchi?
No, Scoggins, but
I don't know. I thought Horiguchi. I was just like, oh, I got this one.
Yeah. I got you, man. Horiguchi.
Justin Scoggins.
Yeah, Scoggins. Scoggins is clearly a better striker traditionally anyway, but it's just he can't mix it up as well. But I think the only time Demetrius has had problems was with big guys who could wrestle him, like Dominic Cruz. When Dominic Cruz was getting piecing up, he got a hold of Demetrius, slowed him down, beat him. Ian McCall in that first fight, same thing. The rounds that he won, he was smothering him on the floor, and Ian McCall's a pretty big flyweight. I don't think if you can't get a hold of him and slow him down, unless you catch him, I'm not sure if you beat him.
Yeah, that was one of the only fights. A lot of people were looking at that as maybe this I mean, the key is to be faster than Cruz, so not necessarily that great of a key, but that was like the only guy that especially around that time, because that was even before his injuries, that anybody had outstruck Cruz on the feet, and he was just smothering him. He was just so fast. He was pressuring him. He was just totally ignoring all the feints that he does and just going right in after him. All those darts, all those different angles, just charge right after him because he's so fast you could actually catch him. And then Cruz just smothered him with wrestling for the rest of the fight after that. He was like, okay, game plan change. We're not fighting him on the feet,
Yeah, it was excellent. What's your pick? Because we done these. My pick this weekend was TJ Dillashaw against Cody Garbrandt. What was your pick? Have you come to a pick yet? Have you decided?
I think I'm going with Cody, actually.
Cody, nice.
And I think I just have a little bit more of a bias because, speaking of Cruz is like probably my, top 3 fighters ever. One of my just absolute favorites. And I just think just because his style is so active and so intelligent and just so well thought out, he's not in there just fighting or not in there just brawling. And it's so entertaining for me to watch for whatever reason. But I think I just give him that bias considering how much closer those fights were. And when you look at the first fight with Cody and TJ, before that game plan changed, with not setting up the leg kicks, kind of like, he was told by Dwayne Ludwig. Before that, it was literally like right after he landed on him and he almost knocked him out with 2 more punches that just like ever so slightly missed right after he got up from being knocked down. So if those would have landed, fight would have been over. So obviously it's a pick 'em fight. It could go either way. But I think it's a super close fight. Just because he lost by knockout doesn't mean he won't get the knockout in this one. And I think this is just a hunch. This isn't science, But, I think he underestimated TJ in the first fight. Yeah. I really think he did. And I think this one he's not even talking as much crap on this one.
Yeah. The reason why I went with TJ is because I thought that his adjustments in the second round was excellent when he went southpaw, and then the same combination that dropped him in the first round, that kind of hook combination,
right.
TJ countered it from southpaw. I thought that was brilliant. And I also think that if you look at TJ in the past, he's been great in rematches. The adjustments he's made in rematches have been excellent. The Henan Barrow fight, the first one was a great performance, one of the better performances we've seen, like kind of breakout performances, if you will. But that second one was amazing. And then the one against Asuncao as well. The first one was close, and the second one he just blew him out the water. Now, obviously, TJ is just getting better anyway, so that could have just happened. But I do think that he's a very analytical type of fighter. I think when you saw the adjustments he made round to round, I just feel like he's a bit cleverer in that way.
I'd argue the difference between, if you were kind of looking at those fights, is when you look at the Henan Barrow fight, he dominated him from bell to bell. Like, it wasn't close. Whereas, like, he kind of caught Cody, if you really think about it. And same with, you could say the same thing about Cody in the first round. And yes, he did make the adjustment. It was an intelligent one, which I don't think Cody was prepared for at all.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't like he thoroughly dominated him. No. And then in the second fight had a mental advantage. I think Cody is just like, man, if I would have landed that second punch, I would have won, and this time it's going to happen. I think Henan Barrow was, you never really know, but I do think the mental edge was definitely on TJ's side in that second fight, which everyone always says is a huge factor of a fight,
Yeah. I think as well, Garbrandt, looking back at that fight, he'll probably kick himself that he didn't pursue TJ after that first round. It seemed like he had him hurt, and then obviously TJ gets the rest between rounds, but then Garbrandt then went back to his counter-striking. He didn't go after him. I think if he was a bit smarter, if he would have put more pressure on him, because TJ clearly was still hurt. Like, you can't recover completely after that shot that he took. So I think that was a bit of a tactical error. I think if that happened again, if he hurt him late, I don't think he'd sit back as much as he did again against TJ.
Yeah, that's a strange thing too, because you're always worried about like a classic Shane Carwin example, or just anyone that just goes headhunting. You even saw that in the Gray Maynard Frankie Edgar fight, where Randy Couture is yelling at Gray Maynard. He's like, quit like headhunting. You're losing the fight now. and he lost a lot of energy as a result. And you could even argue, especially in the first fight, that the only reason that went to a draw was as a result of the success of the first round, ironically, because of where that left Gray Maynard energy-wise and depletion-wise, as opposed to sticking to a game plan. You know, it's just like, oh, I've heard him. Let's just keep going after it, you know?
Yeah. I've just one more thing I want to talk about today, but if anybody has any questions, get them in quick and we'll try to get to them. But there's just one more thing I wanted to talk about from my side was the UFC are holding a press conference, one of those quarterly press conferences that they do quarterly on Friday. And what they normally do is they'll get a lot of fighters coming up in the next quarter or for the end of the year. Have them on stage. Some of them will talk smack to each other. They'll answer some questions, and it's usually a bit of fun. But a lot of people are thinking that maybe they'll announce Conor versus Khabib. Some other people don't think that'll happen. But what's your expectations for the press conference on Friday? I think the only ones I know confirmed was Darren Till and Woodley apparently will be there.
I'm really trying not to get my hopes up. I'm really trying not to, but the closer and closer it gets, the bigger and bigger that feeling is. Like, they're going to announce October 6th, Conor McGregor versus Khabib. Like, the closer and closer we get. I would love for them to announce something about DC, but I don't think anything's ready for that. That's probably the only other big fight. I don't think we're going to hear anything about John Jones, GSP. So in terms of like a huge fight, the only one that I see realistically being on the table is going to be, Khabib and Conor. As far as other big fights, I'm really not expecting a whole lot aside from that. It's like the elephant in the room. No one's even talking about anything else for tomorrow. So I think if you manage your expectations and you say it's probably not going to happen, then it does happen, you feel good. But I'm having a hard time even doing that. Like, I'm now almost expecting it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to. I'm really trying not to.
Yeah, definitely try not to. But it would be such a disappointment, wouldn't it, if it didn't happen? Just because of everybody talking about it, and it wouldn't surprise me, but it would be very disappointing.
Yeah, and the big thing was that Instagram post you were talking about, the Instagram post from, it was Conor's manager, right?
Yeah. Plus, Conor done an Instagram post where it was a picture of him with MMA gloves on, saying like, "I'm back," or something, or "Honey, I'm home."
Yeah. I saw that on Twitter. But yeah, like, for those of you who haven't seen the Instagram though, it's like literally his manager, and it's got a picture of flights to Las Vegas. Which, I mean, call me crazy, but that seems pretty coincidental with this big press conference. And it's his manager. And what did it say? It had like a picture of Elvis, and it was something like, "Oh, it's on," or something like that. Yeah, so and he deleted it too. So obviously didn't mean to go up. So I think that's really funny. And it seems to be a confirmation. But man, I'm really trying not to get my hopes up even in spite of that. Like, because, I mean, we've seen that happen before. I remember being really excited for the UFC 200 press conference, the last one that they did like before like the fight week stuff, that they were going to change their mind about putting Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz on it. And I just remember watching that, and it was just like, Dana, you shut out those questions from the beginning. He's like, "That fight's not happening. Don't ask any questions about it." And people tried to, and he was almost just got mad about it. So
yeah. Brothers on the chat again. It will be announced tomorrow. Conor versus Khabib. I've seen a video of him out on a run in New York. It's close. Yeah, he said it's close. Yeah, that's right as well. Conor done it was an Instagram or a TMZ, wasn't it? TMZ video. Classic TMZ, just running up on people and asking them questions. Man, some neck. But yeah, as well, it's all pointing towards it. I assume it'll be announced tomorrow. It'd be kind of silly if it is done, if it is signed. It'd be silly not to announce at that press conference and then just announce it like on Twitter or something like that. Like, get the news out there on a big platform with a lot of anticipation around it. Here's one for you. Question: Black Guys Production. What percentage of the UFC athletes do you think are on PEDs?
Oh man, there's no good answer to this.
No.
Dude, I'm gonna say 70%.
Whoa.
Or more.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think. I mean, did anybody see Icarus by any chance? Like, in the comments, like, you saw it. I mean, the way that they caught Armstrong is they literally, like, he would have like a 5-minute break in between heats, like in the Tour de France, and they literally caught him in that 5-minute window. If they didn't, he would have gotten by, and he probably would have placed really high or even won. I don't know where he was in the standings before that, but like it was that short of a window. And I use this hacking example all the time. The way PEDs work is just like computer hacking does. Computer hacking doesn't predict what people are going to do. In some ways it does, but 99% of what like computer hacking, like prevention does and firewalls and all that stuff is they're updating based on viruses people made up. Because essentially what it is like you're putting up a wall and they're figuring out a million ways to get around it because it's literally your mind coming up with it. I mean, it's like a kid when your parents hide the cookie jar and you end up finding it. You know, it's like it's just something that people do over and over. And this is adults. You know, we're not kids. You know, even if the parents do succeed, it's adults doing it now. Much more intelligent, you would hope. So I think fighters are cheating because everyone else is cheating is the classic idea.
Yeah.
And they're using it to heal and they're using it to do all these things. And I don't think, dude, I'm super pessimistic today. I don't think we're ever going to win that battle. I don't ever think that's going to win. So.
Yeah, you're very pessimistic today. Somebody else is quite pessimistic in the chat about MMA
90%.
fighters. Hilton, MMA is probably the cleanest sport just by virtue of the fact that most of the fighters don't make enough money to afford PEDs. Probably like 70% are on gear, which is low for a pro sport. Is 70% low for a pro sport? I guess, maybe. For cycling it is. I completely agree. I think it is quite high still. I do think that obviously Lance Armstrong had a bit more money and a bit probably more scientific help to get around that, so I don't think it's quite as but I also think that
but he also had the attention that no one else is going to get, like even with USADA, like I mean they caught him in a 5-minute window, so that's one of the biggest stars in an entire sport by far, especially in America, where you're honing into such a degree that like it's so constricting that you can't possibly do anything, and that was the only time they caught him. You know, it's just an incredible level of detail that no one else is getting, so they have way more leeway than that. You know, is like
Lance Armstrong relatively for like cycling, he's probably like relatively to everybody else in that sport, he's so famous, like it's insane. I can't name another cyclist, not one.
Unless you're actually French, you probably can't.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So he's like so famous for that sport.
Now and later, you got to give me something better than that. 70%, not with the extreme blood test in the UFC. I don't think so. We just named the whole Tour de France thing with Armstrong and just talked about specific examples. You got to give me a better argument than that.
Give a better argument.
Yeah. That's like we've already addressed that. We know they're taking blood tests, and they do that in other sports, and people still do it, and you have to catch them in a 5-minute window. I think they're all on steroids.
But yeah, by the way, Dan from Oregon is here. He's not going to get this, but Donald Trump is in the house. That's all I'll say. Go back and listen. Somebody said, who was that?
We gave you a shout out in the beginning, Dan.
Yeah. And now and later, the Diaz brothers ruined their prime ages not fighting. I kind of agree with that, in a way. What age is Nick? What age is Nate? Maybe Nick is coming probably the end of his prime. Nate is maybe in his prime. So, yeah. But yeah, they should be fighting. It's insane. Yeah,
Nick Diaz he's been past his prime, if you ask me, because, I mean, what is he, 35 now?
Yeah, so
I mean, I guess you could still say that, though. I mean, there are 32-year-old fighters that are doing incredible stuff.
You'd probably say that Nick's prime was
like Randy Couture.
Late Strike Force, maybe?
I would say so too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at what he did when he got to the UFC, he did an incredible job against BJ Penn, but then he lost 3 in a row. I guess technically the Anderson fight got overturned, but you know, what can you do? He just hasn't won in a long time.
Yeah.
Nate Diaz, absolutely. Nate Diaz, yes.
Yeah. I do need to get a better backdrop. I need to get like a green screen or something, because I actually am in a kitchen. Just over
dude, that's a dope kitchen, dude.
It is a cool kitchen.
So dope.
Like, look at the chessboard thing. Look at that. It's like a chessboard that like
that from now on.
Yeah, it's like a chessboard that a child made, because it doesn't actually match up correctly. It's fucking silly.
Yeah. It's like Tetris.
Yeah. What else? Any more questions here before we leave everybody? I assume your pick tomorrow is Demetrius Johnson, yeah?
Yeah, I can't pick against him. I think Henry Cejudo will do better in the first fight, but I just can't go up against DJ.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. I think that's enough. Although, one more. I see one more. Dan from Oregon. I'll let him get a question in just because he's Donald Trump. DJ wants all the belts. One Ryzen Bellator. How many fights left on his deal? I did see this actually. I seen that he wants titles in other organizations. Don't know how many fights he has left on his deal, but I think that's probably just gamesmanship from DJ, saying, "Oh, maybe my contract's up soon. I want some titles in Ryzen. Pay me more money."
Yeah, that might be the one negotiation tactic he's trying. I don't know. I don't buy that. Like, it kind of reminds me of like back in the day when Anderson Silva used to get asked, "Who do you think could beat you in a fight?" And he was like, "Honestly, myself, dude." And you're just like, that's just such a non-answer. Like, you're not going to fight in one or Bellator. You might go to Bellator if you're just really unhappy with the UFC, but you're not going to hold them simultaneously. That's not going to happen. Yeah. And he wants to go down as the greatest fighter in the world. That's not going to happen going there. Like, name a 125-pound fighter right now. Somebody in the comments do it. Don't Google it. You're not allowed to. Name a 125-pound one fighter named a 125-pound Ryzen fighter, Bellator fighter. Like,
Bellator don't even have a flyweight division, right?
I don't think they do. I don't even know if they do. I'll be honest with you. So, I mean, it's like, what are you going to do in any of those organizations that's meaningful to you? Obviously, they've got Horiguchi. They had Ian McCall, and Ryzen. So, yeah. So, I mean, they got some really great fighters, but obviously he beat Horiguchi, so it's not saying anything. I think he's a legacy fighter who, I mean, I think that's a negotiation tactic type kind of thing that is going to fall on deaf ears. Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's like, "Oh, you want to go to Ryzen? Oh, okay, go ahead." We don't believe you,
Yeah, it's a very weird one, because I love watching Demetrius Johnson fight, and I just seen here a quote from him that he said, Demetrius Johnson says, "True fans of MMA love the UFC flyweight division," which, yeah, I think hardcore fans who love fighting do love the division, or they love the fighters in the division. I don't think you can really love a division. I'm not sure. Like, I love the heavyweight division. Like, I don't think that makes sense. But hardcore fans love talented fighters, and that's true. But if you're not a hardcore fan, you need some kind of personality to attract. Or if you're not, attracting the casual fan, you need personality. Yeah,
that's the thing that's different about MMA from pro wrestling. Things get compared all the time. It's like, it's inverted. It's like in pro wrestling, if you don't have a good gimmick, no one cares about you. And your in-ring ability, I guess, is kind of part of that, but no one really gives a dick about that. Needless expletives again. But like in the UFC, it's like, yeah, you have a great personality, but your fight matters. And the icing on the cake is, do you have a personality? It's like Anderson Silva could barely talk English. Yeah. No one cared about that because you do. Yeah, it's normal. Or, GSP, like we actually did a highlight in one of our videos. It's actually comical, like when GSP does try to push back on Bisping and stuff like that.
I love it.
He's like, "Oh, you sound like you are drunk, Michael Bisping." It's like it doesn't really translate. Yeah. And then the stock market thing too. It's people don't have to be these incredible talkers to be successful. I mean, there's just time and time. I mean, Chuck Liddell. When do you ever remember Chuck Liddell just laying the shit down on somebody through some shit talk? Never, ever. Most of the fighters, actually, I would contend, not even Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar has been really, really bad at it.
Yeah. I think Anderson Silva spoke better English than Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell could barely speak English. It's like
getting into some rough territory there. I mean, it's true though. It's like I think because of Conor McGregor, it's put to the forefront what that can do for you, and because of the lack of success by somebody like Demetrius Johnson, it's kind of put to the forefront of not having that. It's like two polar extremes where it's like, you've got somebody that has everything a promoter could ever want, and you almost have DJ, which is like, to be honest, kind of like the least favorable trace. It's like somebody who's unwilling to fight and take risks. Conor McGregor is willing to take all the risks, talk all the trash. Demetrius Johnson's like, I'll give the UFC whoever, I'll fight whoever they want me to fight. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say. I ain't going to say no more. And it's like, okay, you haven't really given us anything. And he hasn't fought name value opponents, like, is something I bring up all the time. So it's like you have those extremes. So people assume that you have to have shit talking, but that's never been true. I mean, like, how many people are excited about Boachinia right now? You know, like, Paulo Costa. How many people are excited about him right now? That guy can't speak a lick of English. That guy fights like a motherfucker. Anthony Johnson. DC's really good. You know, Jones is really good, but Jones' trash talk is really bad. Like, I remember when he was about to fight Rampage, he like tried to make like a trash talking video, and people just made fun of it endlessly. Yeah. It's just not good at it. And of course, they did have some real banter and some real hate, which is always going to help. But yeah, the vast majority of people aren't good at it.
Do you know who has like the worst trash talk ever? And he seems like he should be like the coolest motherfucker ever, but like he's it's just too much. Luke Rockhold. That guy, man. Like
achieve.
Yeah, like he's. I love that video. But like, there's just something about him. Like, even like you get videos of him, and it's like, look at Luke Rockhold. He doesn't know what to do with his hands, and he's like making like gang signs and all. And you're like, what?
Oh, the one with Nate Diaz.
Yeah, there's two of them.
Yeah.
There's two.
He's like, I don't know what to do. I give up.
And I don't get it, because he seems like he should be a really cool guy, but he just cannot like get anything right on camera.
You could just pull a Darren Till, where Darren Till's just like, and it actually kind of works. You're just like, oh shit, like he's serious.
Yeah, he's completely serious. But yeah. Dan from Oregon said he's a buddy of Matt Hume, talking about DJ. DJ might want more on his mantle, like Eddie Alvarez, Hendo, Gerard. Multiple promotion. Yeah, I guess so. I just think it's a contractual thing, personally. But yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm trying to even like think of a parallel to this. It's like, oh, I can get the Oscar, but then I can also go to a regional kind of thing that nobody's ever heard of. It's like,
movie.
Would you prefer to have 10 Oscars or 10 regional film awards? You know, like, you might be a film purist, you know, whatever that means. And you could go down that route. And I'm not saying there isn't world-class talent at these places, but the talent pool is not nearly as deep. I don't think there's anybody that's going to debate that. So somebody else's credit, though, for some reason I'm wanting to say it, like, assume it's Brazilian. So Rafael Schaefer.
Yeah.
But it's obviously Rafael. If your last name's Schaefer, you're not Brazilian. Horiguchi and Wolf Caldwell. So good names there. Oh, he's bantamweight. Okay. So, actually, you got one. Okay. So you're as good as I did. Jack Slack, true leader of the M125ers. M125ers? Male 125ers. Got it. But yeah. Who weighs 125 pounds? Well, really, nobody does. They just cut the shit out of themselves.
There,
People cut like 20 pounds even.
That's insane.
I know 145 pounds weighing guys walking around.
Interestingly, in boxing, I think it was the I don't know if it was the ABC as a whole, or I know Andy Foster was there, who's well known in kind of the MMA circles. They are trying to ban weight cutting in a way. They're trying to say that if you cut over a certain percentage of your body, it's actually seen as cheating. And I think a bill passed, I think it was yesterday or the day before. This is just in boxing.
This was where? Boxing.
But I think it's all commissions are taking it up. But I know Andy Foster, who's California, right? Is that right? I think he's California. He was pushing it. He seems to be pushing most kind of new rules and regulations in boxing and MMA. So I wonder if that'll come over to MMA. But that's interesting. You know, they're actually saying it's in fact cheating if you cut a certain amount of your body weight.
I don't think that's unfair to say. I mean, I guess if everybody's doing it, then everybody's cheating. So is it really cheating anymore? You know, on an actual, like, okay, well, what is cheating? You know, if you're really trying to define it as if there are no rules in place. Yeah. But So Dan, you said pride never die, you filthy casual. Pride doesn't exist anymore, so that doesn't really fit into the conversation.
But it never dies, Jason. It never dies.
Oh yeah, that's true. So it does fit because it's not dead.
Exactly.
That's right.
It's still alive.
Fair enough.
In our minds.
That belt obviously means a shit ton. Even Strikeforce would mean a lot. Obviously, there is no 125 there or anything like that. UFC isn't exciting more. ACB, Ryzen, KSW, all amazing production. I wish they would try to match the KSW or Pride for that matter production values because it looks like an Olympic sport the way they do it.
KSW is insane.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm tempted to go to England because they're coming to the SSE Arena in London. And I know that Tom is going to go to that. I'm tempted to go to that in October.
The only thing I will say about KSW, some crazy fans at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy fans.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like crazy bad? Like they're violent?
Yeah. The show in Dublin, it kicked off a little bit. Not too bad, but like I've been at like a lot of MMA events and that never happened. Went to the KSW event and it got a bit dicey in there for a while. But yeah, it was excellent.
There are a lot of wily Irish dudes that go there too. They're just looking for a fight as well.
No, like this was like 90% Polish guys. It was
Jesus.
It was crazy. So I was sitting in media row. We went to cover the show, and there was this guy sitting in my seat because basically they didn't set up a TV backstage, so we had to run back and forth to watch the fights, which is just a nightmare. To go back to interview fighters and then come down to see the fights.
Wow.
So I ran down, and there was some guy in my seat, and I sat down just kind of beside him because one of them were free. And he was a random fan, and he was there with his mate, some Polish guy, absolutely pissed drunk. And he turns around to me and goes, "Where are you from?" This was a show in Dublin. And he goes, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Dublin." He's like, he started laughing to his friend, like really manically, like laughing with his eyes like this.
Wow.
And I was like, what the hell's going on here? Eventually security came and took him away, but it was fucking a bit crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. Like, I've been to a lot of MMA shows myself. I've been to local ones. I've been to, obviously UFC ones, Bellator. I've never seen anything like that, you know?
No.
That's kind of strange.
I'm not saying it happens in all the shows.
Fights do break out. But,
yeah. But
I mean, I don't know much about Poland, but, it's like, what do they call, like, Krzysztof Szczynski, like the Polish experiment?
Yeah.
It just kind of, like, imply that Poland is kind of, like, I don't know, like, there's just a bunch of tough assholes that come out of there. I don't know.
I know a lot of nice Polish people, but the people that were at that event, not all of them, just a small minority of people were kind of crazy. But the production was amazing. They had like the almost Pride entrance, but I thought it was funny because they had Chris Fields in like a little cage, and Chris Fields is like 6'5", and he was like hunched down in this little cage thing. It was like it was great.
Like, looks so like uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah.
Somebody said, "Do you even train KSW, Brett?" That's actually hilarious. Ryzen is Pride. We all know that. No, it's not. It's like a 10% version of Pride. Pride was way better. Dream was like the closest thing they've had since then. Dream wasn't even close. 10% of population in Poland watches KSW. Yeah, Poland is fucking crazy. They have the second highest attendance record. They beat out UFC Australia when Holly Holm fought Ronda Rousey. The only thing is Shockwave 2002 with 90 fucking thousand fans, which is insane.
Madness.
But yeah, like KSW just seems to be doing, like, as far as production goes, everything right. As far as their top stars, like Pujanowski, it's a bit questionable as far as like their actual like talent level. I mean, they got some guys like Khalidov that, have been tremendously successful there.
Just vacated his title.
He vacated it.
Yeah, he vacated. He wants to fight Narkun again. He just lost to Narkun, and he went up in weight for like a super fight, lost, and he wants to go and do it again. And he vacated his title because he basically said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go back up. I haven't defended my title, so I'll just vacate it. Somebody else can have it." So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome that he's willing to, like, okay, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
So I'm up for that. I think KSW does a ton of stuff. They have a ban at weigh-ins as well. What was their ban? Are you familiar with that?
No, I didn't see the band, but they do have crazy like gladiator music on, which is just awesome. Yeah, Kaladov wants a rematch. Yeah.
I wish the UFC would do that. Like, this is the worst comparison ever because it goes back to WWE. But they'll do like their WrestleMania events, and they'll always book in like a 50,000 plus type kind of arena, and they'll put up crazy lights, and they'll just have this massive event feeling to it. And obviously, you can't just do that with any fight. So if you book, like what happened at 213 when they tried to make it a massive weekend with George St. Pierre versus GSP, but that fight fell through.
Yeah.
And then Nunes versus Shevchenko fell through. And then you ended up with the interim fight of Whitaker and Romero won. Like, obviously, you can't just make that happen. But I wish there was something more that moved it towards this big, huge arena feel. It felt like as much as a spectacle as a sport, not to go with that old spectacle to sport comparison, but like I wish it had that Olympic feel.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to get rid of Face the Pain, the song, because it's
what's wrong with Face the Pain?
That song sucks so goddamn bad. Oh my god. It's like shitty new metal from the new metal era in the early 2000s of people that listened to Limp Bizkit but weren't half as good. And Limp Bizkit was a bad band. Don't get me wrong, I used to be a Limp Bizkit fan.
Same.
But it's like a shitty version of that, like a really shitty version. It's like the guys that are in your backyard practicing and they've got like shitty amps and like the drummer has like, I'm getting way into musician stuff. I was going to say Sabian B8s. Nobody knows what the fuck kind of symbols those are. But anyhow, it's like the worst players with the worst ability. And it's like, okay, this is the best comparison. It's like Steven Seagal, all his old movies, the soundtrack for that, if you ever listen to that stuff, it's like these shitty, like really 90s sounding keyboards. And so it instantly dates everything. It's like, okay, that's a 90s film. And then you watch movies that come out now, you realize they moved away from that. It's like these epic scores with orchestras and all this kind of stuff. And the good thing about it is not like it's neutral music. No one likes it, but they do like it. Like the Pride music. No one likes it, but they do like it. It's not like anybody's like listening to a composition similar to Pride's theme in their car. They're not listening to orchestras in their car. Most people, some people, obviously. But like when you put on something like Face the Pain, you alienate an entire section of the population that hates that kind of music, which is everybody. So it's like, what are you doing?
Why the hell do the UFC still use that thing? I don't get it. I don't get why they still use it. They must have like a 50-year contract. They're like, oh my god, this is the best song I've ever heard. Dana White was just like, oh, I love it. 50-year contract if we can use that song because we know it's going to be so good and everyone's going to love it forever. They must.
They clearly bought it in an era when they didn't have money.
Yeah.
And they just screwed the shit out of whoever that artist was. And let's be honest, they didn't really screw them. That was the best deal they would ever possibly get in their entire lifetimes. But like that, they got it so dirt cheap that it's like it's nothing to them.
Yeah.
But then you watch all their hype videos and you watch their embedded and it's like dun 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 dun. You know, it's like this big like orchestral theme that sounds super epic, and you're like, okay, neutral music is a very hard thing to do, and that's like pretty much the only thing that you can really do is like this epic like movie style music. And instead you're like, yeah, dude, early 2001, dude, like when Limp Bizkit was at, Cornerstone 1999 and people were getting hurt while people were like standing on top of these wooden planks and people were going home in stretchers. That's the era that I really like. That era's cool. Break stuff. Fuck yeah. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Should get Hans Zimmer in there to do some shit. Dan from Oregon. I think Ryzen deserves more respect.
Calgary was a sellout.
Huh?
Sorry, I read ahead on
you read ahead.
He was saying it wasn't a sellout. They said on the broadcast that it was a sellout, so maybe I'm wrong. But on the broadcast, they said it was a sellout.
They lied. They lied.
Maybe they did. Snakes in the grass. Snakes in those grass.
Yeah,
I have
one more thing from my side. I know I said this ages ago, but we're gonna finish up in about.
sorry.
No, we're gonna finish up in about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the questions that come in. But I have one more thing. Where does Dustin Poirier stand in the lightweight division? Dustin Poirier probably should get a title fight, but he's not going to get it because Khabib and Conor seems to be happening. Where the hell does he land, and who does he fight?
I think if Khabib wins, he's got a shot at the title. But if Conor wins, like I might have said this last week when we were on, but I mean, Conor traditionally, like the way we saw him with Aldo and even Edgar by extension, because he lost to Aldo, he was like, why would I want to fight Aldo again? I knocked him out in 13 seconds, even though in the cage he said he wanted to. I think he's going to say the same thing. Like, it would have been Alvarez or Poirier. I think he would have said the same thing, because I think he's one of those people where, and I'm not defending it, I'm not saying I'm, agreeing with him on it or anything, but I think that's his rationale. Like, oh, I already beat you. Why would I be motivated to train to fight you again? And obviously there's more risk on his part, but yeah, it's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I really wonder. Because Dustin Poirier, I'm really, really liking how he's been performing lately. I think we still kind of look at him as the guy who lost to Conor and had them other losses. But, man, the run that he's on, he really, really does deserve a title fight. He really, really does. And it'd be a shame if he didn't get it, you know? Mm-hmm. It'd be a big shame.
So it looks like his attendance numbers are right on UFC Calgary.
Yeah.
Maybe they marketed it as, oh, well, we only put 10,000 tickets on the market.
Yeah.
And we sold out of that.
Dan from Oregon just said, Dana said that no one looked into it. Eddie Bravo gave me a call, so I looked into it. Eddie Bravo, that man. Just
Eddie Bravo?
Yeah. Just
that's great. That's a Joe Rogan. Yeah. We'll look into it.
We'll look into it. What's your favorite Eddie Bravo conspiracy?
Do you see my Matt Hughes video by chance?
Yes.
The part where it's just like all of a sudden he's like Tower 7, and then it just like goes into his interview with Matt Hughes. Dude, I can't stand conspiracy theories. Like, I'm like a science or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Dude, it all drives me nuts, but I do find it funny. But dude, like, I can't listen to it. I just can't do it. It's like the analogy I use, like for you to believe that most of that stuff happens, it's like stacking chairs on top of chairs over and over and over, because it's like the probability of all these things going down. Like, I've heard people ramble on. It's like, oh, because JFK was fixed and 9/11 was an inside job, then for sure this happened. It's like, dude, like, you believe both of those things happened and everything in between. Like, I don't know. You lose me 100% getting into that.
You just need to look into it. You need to look into it.
I just need to look into it. That's the problem. I looked into it.
I love that that's his get out for everything. Just look into it.
So let's look this up. Let's settle this real quick. Okay, so Saddle Dome is where they're at. Scotiabank Saddle Dome. Let's see, what does Wiki say? Capacity.
While Jason figures that out and we come to the conclusion of this question, go and click the like button and the subscribe button on this video and give it a share.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Just do it. Don't do it. Don't listen to that guy.
Good cop, bad cop. Don't do it. Yeah, so 20,000 people have historically fit in there for hockey. So, yeah. Clearly it's possible. There was a bit of bullshit there.
They sold out every ticket they sold.
Spinning right there. Yeah, like, we marketed this amount of seats. It's like, that doesn't make sense. There's some sort of spin going on there for sure. It's weird.
I just love this because I can't answer the question. Admittedly, I can't, and I am a kind of science guy. Rafael Schaefer. The Brazilian.
Rafael, yes.
The Brazilian. Explain to me right now how you know nuclear power is real. Like, you know.
How do you
know
that?
How do you know that?
Yeah, dude, I saw... Do you know who Theo Joe is?
Said
he's a guy that does like duping videos. Like, so he'll do like a tech video and he's like, here's how to quadruple your internet speed for free. And like what he'll do is he'll get tin foil and he'll wrap it around and he'll literally make up science bullshit. And he's just duping, like, you know, kind of like people that don't know shit about electronics. He's like, what it is, the ionization and the way that aluminum foil reacts with the atoms. And the thing is, it's taking advantage of this thing, and all these people trying to, like, it didn't work. And, you know, most of the people know about it. But he went into this video where he's talking about conspiracies too, where it's like somebody literally came up with a theory that what you're looking at when you see mountainsides, like, some of them look like tree stumps. And so therefore they used to be tree stumps, and that in the 1700s, in the first nuclear war, it's like there's this entire video that like he made about how like people get into that. It's like, dude, like, I'm not saying that things are impossible, but it's like, you got to prove it first. It's like, I believe aliens exist, but I don't think they came here. Like, maybe they have, but you got to prove that shit first. And you can't give me that, what is that 70s video of someone cutting open one? Sorry. No one cares about this, but conspiratorial talk makes me remember, does the UFC still practice astroturfing for its marketing, or is it just mostly useful idiots? Astroturfing? They used to do like staging where they would take up more, like when they in the early 2000s, when you would see like Tito Ortiz and you would see like the fire come up. Dana White has actually gone on record to say they couldn't fill the arenas. So one trick that they used to do is they used to build the staging out to make it look more full, because then like a quarter of that front filling area, they just didn't have to have anybody sitting there, which is pretty smart if you think about it, although costly. You could just give out free tickets. I don't know, but
I'm not a big marketing guy. What the hell is astroturfing? I just googled it. Astroturfing
I don't know
is
what
the
it means by
artificial creation. Artificial creation of a grassroots buzz for a product.
Right. Oh,
so,
a grassroots what?
Buzz for a product or service or political viewpoint. So I guess it's like pretending there's a, like, somehow projecting there's a buzz for your show somehow.
It's like market to marketing. Like Enron did that, where they were like, oh, we're going to market our future profits based on hypothetical value.
Oh, Jesus.
And then everybody found out that they were lying about everything. And within 24 hours, they went from being a Fortune 500 company to bankrupt. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely do a bit of that.
Yeah. Astroturfing, man. I show up in your chat and plug my show, Truth in MMA.
What day is that again? Definitely tuning in. Got the secrets that no one's figured it out yet, man.
Yeah. And if Donald Trump is behind it, you know it's true.
If Colby's behind it, you know it's true.
Colby,
you know it's the real belt.
Yeah, it's the real
Dan
belt.
is all about Colby's belt. Like, we got into a bit of I guess a friendly chatter on Twitter about it. He's all about some Colby Covington.
He likes Colby.
Belts.
He's a fan
He
of
likes
Colby.
I mean, like, I think Colby has been kind of victimized in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
Them pulling out this belt shot weekdays, okay, every day, 12. Nice. But like,
train
Colby
by day, Truth in MMA by night, whatever, all day.
Dun, dun. But yeah, all side notes. But I think Colby, more people are going to become fans of Colby. Like, I'm more of a fan of him. He is 2018 champ. Yes. Most articulate way to put it too.
This is number one bullshit. That's all I'll say.
Bullshit.
I think, to be honest, I think that's the best place to end it. I think Colby Covington chat should end the chat, unless an amazing questions comes in the next 10 seconds.
Yeah. For any of those that don't like Colby, are you still virgins, or has that changed since Nerd Bash 2018? Sorry, that's like the joke, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We already talked about this on Twitter. Yeah. It's like Conor McGregor literally, like, Aldo stepped out of his title shot 2 weeks before the fight, and so there was an interim title. That made sense. Max Holloway, 2017 champ, didn't make sense because Aldo wasn't injured and he was the undisputed champ. And on the same day, they announced that Max Holloway was going to be fighting. And it hadn't even been a year. He wasn't even out for a year. And they're like, oh, yeah, interim title, just because it's the main event. No. And then same with the Woodley fight. They knew Woodley was coming back. They knew it. And as a matter of fact, I guarantee you they were working on his title fight as soon as, like, while that fight was being booked. They were like, okay, so you're planning on being back around August or September. Let's just book an interim fight. Like, why would you do that? You devalue the belts. The belts have no meaning now. There's no point. It's like boxing. It's like boxing having all these belts. Now MMA has it. It's a terrible idea.
It's awful. Nobody cares about interim titles anymore. And it shouldn't be that way. They should have been valuable, but they ruined it.
If every single card you ever watch has a title fight on it, and half of those are dubious, then no one cares about titles anymore. Like, you have to have a good reason. Like, okay, you beat the best. Like, you beat the guy who has the belt, or that guy. Like, the only time it should be was like Tito Ortiz and Randy Couture, where it's like, Randy Couture took the belt from Chuck Liddell in the interim title fight after Tito Ortiz went into contract negotiations and was basically like, I'm not fighting the number one contender. Yeah. That made sense. You look at all those situations, and even the Conor one, I don't care how much you hate Conor, it made a ton of sense that he was out for, I don't know, something like 12 months. They didn't know when he was going to come back. He had a cracked rib. That's a serious injury, and for good reason, he didn't come back for 5 months after that. It made sense to make that an interim title fight, but when you're literally booking the actual champion during the same time that you're booking an interim title fight, then what the fuck is the point of an interim belt? Like, yeah. Obviously, I'm getting worked up about this, but it's more humorous than anything. But, like, what the fuck is the point if you have a real champion, like the actual champion, and you're booking them at the exact same time? Yeah. Like, it makes no sense. An interim belt is meant to be there in between the activity of a fighter, and you don't know when that champion is coming back. Yeah. That's the point. You don't know when they're coming back. It's not just to sell more pay-per-views, and there's no evidence it does sell more pay-per-views.
Here's my prediction for early 2019. Demetrius Johnson is on his last fight of his contract. He fights that out. He's out for a while. The UFC need to make a new champion. They make an interim title between Shorty Torres and Sergio Pettis. Shorty Torres wins. Demetrius comes back. Demetrius Johnson versus Shorty Torres. Super fight. Title versus title. That's what Demetrius wants.
So I got to continue on this thing from Oregon thing just because I love a good debate. But he says Woodley called out Colby waiting for the New York card. So, yeah, it's stupid that they're stripping him from it. So UFC made a mistake making the interim title fight, and then they made it even worse by then stripping him from it the moment the fight starts or whatever. And I know you've already made some bones about me saying that in the video. Who cares? He's basically stripped of the title unless Woodley somehow pulls out. Okay, that's probably not going to happen. But, like, so it's like one of these kind of things where Colby calling him out, yes, that makes the situation worse, but it doesn't make anything different. And I'm not the biggest fan of Woodley either. I don't care if I'm the biggest fan. He still is the champion. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of him. So, yeah, sorry. I'm just getting into it.
I completely agree. It's makes no sense. And then they send them to the White House. Why are you sending a champion who you're going to strip to the White House? This makes no...
Yeah. Like, the only way that fight doesn't happen is if Woodley falls out. Like, we saw what happened with 223. Khabib had 5 different fighters in front of him. That fight still happened. And the exact same stipulation was until they throw a punch. And that happened no matter who Khabib fought. The exact same thing is going to happen. It's like Woodley has to pull out for that fight to no longer go down. Yeah. And he knows he's going to win the Till fight. Like, I think if I'm Woodley, Darren Till is a match made in heaven because it's a striker who, for what we know, for all intents and purposes, can't wrestle. And he can knock out Darren Till. Darren Till can knock him out, but there's nothing that we know of out of Darren Till's past, anything that his record says, any of his credentials that says he can do anything on the ground. So,
yeah, we'll see. I don't mind the fight itself, but yeah, I just think the circumstances are a bit silly. But we'll leave it there. If you haven't subscribed to MMA on Point, because you probably have already, this guy's channel. Is there still people talking in the chat? What?
If I haven't annoyed the shit out of people.
No, you haven't. Today. There's actually a great interim belt video that he goes into great detail on his opinion on that. So go check it out.
Sure.
And also subscribe to this, like this, share it, do all that, and we'll be back hopefully next week. I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do. I said Wednesdays was going to be the time for these chats, but it seems to be Thursdays working out for me better. So maybe a Thursday next week, but we'll see. Maybe Jason will join me, or if he's not free, we'll get somebody else. But thanks again, Jason.
Cool. Thanks, man. I was typing back to Dan just because I can't stop it. But I appreciate you having me on. I thoroughly enjoy these chats. And I don't know. Obviously, like, I just love talking about this stuff. So it's a good time. Every time you have me on, it's a good time. So.
Thanks for coming on. And I actually do this kind of late notice yesterday. And thanks for saving me again today. So if you want to have your last comment to Dan before we leave, if you want to leave it on the last comment.
Yeah, well, he's bringing up Whitaker was interim champ, never stripped, while Gap fighting for the title. Why strip him? Totally agree. I was just going to say, like, it's not necessarily, I don't know if you were trying to say something against my argument, but like, I totally agree. And in the video, I talked about how it was ridiculous how they did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I don't agree with that either, but yeah, that's my last comment on it. So I agree with you there, Dan. We agree.
We agree. We came to an agreement. Brilliant. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Cheers.